Welcome back to another podcast from the Trees and Utilities Conference. This time we have Jeff Labelle, Distribution Vegetation Manager from BC Hydro. Welcome, Jeff. Appreciate your coming.
Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Phil.
Fellow
Thanks
Canadian.
for having me.
Though we did offline. This is what Canadians do. We have this West Coast, East Coast thing. He's like, oh, you're from Toronto. I was like, oh, no.
I have to be careful. I do have relatives on the East Coast and actually in the U.S. too.
Oh, there you go.
In the beautiful state of Vermont.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We also have Steve Hallmark joining us as a guest host. We thought it would be great to have him join, given that a lot of Steve's experience over the years was on the West Coast, serving several utilities in a leadership role. And Jeff, you're playing a leadership role at BC Hydro, and of course, a lot going on in the world in your neck of the woods. So look forward to kind of chatting about some stuff today. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, even though I don't view it as all that different, Canada, the US, kind of similar, but how is your program maybe set up a little bit differently than what we've seen traditionally in the U.S.? Is there any kind of nuances, differences, or?
We have a lot of challenges as far as geography is concerned.
Yep.
And matching that with the resources that we have to get the work done, that's probably the greatest challenge we have, right? So working with the geography, although we don't have the same, line miles as the other utilities have, they're spread out all over. We're talking about a service territory of over 900,000 square kilometers. I think that works out to about 350,000 square miles.
Yep.
So
that's chunky.
It's about 1.5 times the state of Texas area.
Yep.
So I had to make sure I, found that out first, because since I'm here in Texas, respectfully.
Yeah, respectfully contextualizing.
Right. So, of course, from a planning perspective, mobilization has to be a part of that. As well as adapting to the amount of resources we have and focusing on prioritization. It's really important. So I'd say that that's probably the number one issue we have, and the difference we have is the struggle with geography and terrain. I mean, BC is 75% mountainous, right?
Yep.
So you flatten that out as far as slope distance, and you probably got in Europe altogether, right? So
right.
And we like to build wires to just about everybody, right? Conductors, and we want to make sure that everybody has power. And so in doing that, they stretch all the way from west to east onto a number of islands, and that's some of the most difficult area and geography to work in, right? It's on the coast. So so that's definitely
excellent.
the difference.
So the last couple of years have been a little hard in terms of fires, right? I know it was in Alberta. It was in British Columbia too, right?
It was in British Columbia. In fact, the last 10 years, it's definitely, as far as the size of fires, has increased substantially. The number of fires has also increased. We broke records. The first actually we broke was in 2003. It was the West Kelowna fire.
Yep.
And, I think we lost close to 240 homes in that fire. It was quite extensive. There was a state of emergency. And from that, within the next 2 years, that's when the Wildfire Act came about and came to place. And, from there, basically we've had, off and on fire seasons, but 2017 really broke records, right? So, and again, we had another state of emergency, thousands of people were evacuated. 2018 broke another record. Then it was 2021. You could see the pattern here.
Yeah.
And now 2023, just last year, again, the most fires, and we spent, not BC Hydro, but the province itself spent over $1 billion fighting those fires. So, and I think they found in 2003 that it just did not have enough resources to fight fires.
So now that I remember the exact year, but BC Hydro is no longer a Crown Corporation.
We're still a Crown Corporation.
Oh, you are still
yes,
a Crown
we are.
Corporation.
Yeah.
So, but you still have to play in the same market with your regulators and with your insurance companies and everything else. Are you guys seeing the pressure especially from the insurance side of the business, and saying, what are you doing about mitigating for wildfires?
So I would say that we don't have the same, and maybe that's different too, in the U.S., is we don't have the same environment for litigation. In fact, I just read an article where there was a recent claim that the province made against a private company in the interior for a tree falling on a private line. And that case was eventually found in favor of the company, in that, they did all they could to try to prevent that fire. So they had somebody assess their private line, and they had somebody go out and treat it after that assessment. And so that was basically due diligence. And in the Wildfire Act, there is a provision for due diligence and making sure that you go about it in a responsible way. So, that may be something different than the United States, because I'm seeing a lot of the, from the California wildfires, the lawsuits and the multi-million dollars, and it's
So
really
is the
different that
Wildfire
way.
Act empowering the utilities to take a stronger stand on managing that vegetation?
Absolutely. And it's also putting us on watch too, right? So in the past, couple of decades, since the 2003 fire I mentioned, and then the Wildfire Act, we've definitely stepped up our risk management approach, and we have a risk management plan in place now. We also have a modeling system that gives us an opportunity to look at the risks across the province in amongst our assets and be able to make decisions and, again, prioritize, the activities that we're undertake, right, with that risk system. So it's changed.
So your trees are being managed on a risk-based approach?
Definitely, yeah. And of course, we have a number of people in the field, vegetation coordinators. They're qualified in various certifications, including TRAC, and they regularly go out and look at circuits that we prioritize, again, based on performance, based on the number of outages from trees, and identify those trees and then remove them. So
Those are off right-of-way trees mostly?
off right-of-way trees, we don't really have that many grow into outages. It's very, very small percentage. It's catching up to us a little bit, because we are getting behind in our program because we haven't had the resources. But recently we just put out a contract, and it looks like the response has been great, and hopefully we'll have enough resources to tackle the program a little bit better. Yeah.
Given where you sit geographically, how much collaboration or engagement do you have with, your kind of peers in California and on the West Coast? There's obviously lots of lessons learned there. There's a lot of things you can pull from. How much are you pulling from those experiences and reincorporating it either into your program, your learnings, your risk management, et cetera?
Yeah. So we're definitely talking about it and what's happening in California and the rest of the Western U.S., which is most heavily impacted. I think we already have a really robust program, where there are places where we require the extensive clearances, we implement them, right?
Yep.
So we might have a few more battles with a few customers, but we also have a significant amount of rural area, so we really don't have the pressure that a lot of the big cities do. That said, more and more municipalities are noticing their tree canopy. They're taking inventory of it. They're noticing that it's being reduced. And maybe for other reasons, we've been experiencing some drought, right, years. And so, it's obviously impacting the health of the trees, but they're being forced to build more and more homes, for people that need them. You can understand that the housing market is, very expensive up where we are. And, they're having to remove some of these trees, and they're coming to the utilities. Well, you're in the tree business too, and you remove some trees, so maybe we could keep some of those trees, right? So, and of course, there's the whole discussion about carbon capture and sequestration and climate change. And so that's a bit of a battle for us, because they're coming to us and saying, maybe you could do less. And we're saying, well, no, we have a safety responsibility and a reliability responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And we also have to keep up with the infrastructure that you're building, because they need power too, right? So,
Are your transmission lines governed by NERC?
yes.
Okay.
Well, and it's, I believe, and again, I don't work in the transmission side of the business.
Yep.
But it's certain 138 kV lines and then above.
200
right?
kV and above.
200,
There is
yeah.
some lesser
Yeah.
voltages, but they are part of they have to comply with the NERC requirements.
Same NERC
Right.
standards. And Jeff, maybe you can just highlight for us a little bit, how much of federal legislation impacts you, politically, anything at the federal level, or are you mostly concerned at what's happening provincially from a legislation perspective?
It's provincially. I mean, 94% of BC is Crown land. So
Got it.
it's mostly provincial.
It's mostly provincial.
We deal a little bit with federal parks. I got to say the federal parks have been fantastic for the most part when we deal with them. Understandable, they worry about fire too, right? So, and they definitely don't want a fire caused by a utility.
Yep.
And then D&D land, Department of National Defense. But again, very easy to work with. So, but very small percentage.
What percentage of the footprint is controlled by reservation communities and settlements?
It's again a very small percentage, but what we do recognize is traditional territories of First Nation communities around the province. We also have high-level agreements with I think up to a dozen different communities, through treaties that have been signed off. So, and we work with them, extensively and regularly, and are constantly communicating with these communities. Absolutely, and they're our partners in a number of these projects. We're always trying to promote them, being involved in projects and being companies that can also represent us.
So is the operation fairly mechanized in those rural areas?
They are, but we're increasing it. So we realize that to build on efficiency and to try to catch up to some of the work that we were getting behind in, we're having to mechanize more. So we're definitely promoting more mowers and more mowing machines. Definitely in the rural communities, we have an availability of feller bunchers. There's a machine called a rolly chipper, which grabs the tree and just runs it right through and chips it, in one whole piece. So, that's definitely something that we're trying to promote. Yeah.
Your program, where would you say it is in its digital life cycle? Like, are you guys pretty advanced? Are you still figuring it out? A little bit of both. Are you guys? Is technology a friend or is it a transition?
Definitely a friend. Yeah, and especially the data analysis part of it.
Okay.
And I would say we're fairly well advanced in that side of it. Where I'd like to see us, and we are starting to push the boundaries, is on the satellite imagery and the LiDAR. I know for the transmission circuits, they're flying the LiDAR constantly, right?
Yep.
So, and getting updates, and of course, they have to by regulation too, right? But I think, on the distribution side, we are experimenting with satellite. I like the technology. I'm not sure it's really there for what I want to do with it. And what I mean by that is, I'd really like it to start doing the actual layout of work, and I need that precision. And we basically, our contracts are set up that we pay by unit, and so by the meter, by the tree, by the hour. So knowing exactly what's out there and being able to, just pass that project onto the contractor based on the digital information we get would be nice. And then from a planning point of view, we're a cycle-based management program right now, and we really want to move to, in various portions of the province, where we have the resources, into a condition-based program, right? And, we can make areas bigger, those places that we have a lot of resources, right? We can use them, and low mobilization costs, right? Other areas, because it's very remote, I want to get in and get out. Don't want to go back for a few years, right?
I can imagine.
There's one place, and it's beautiful, Telegraph Creek, and you have to drive for 2.5 hours on this, gravel road, steep terrain, for 12 kilometers of circuit. So probably don't want to spend a lot of time.
So as far as incorporating more of the technology into it, so you're more or less still kind of in the infancy, trying to figure out because I can only imagine, I've been around it in different systems and stuff like that. Where you're at in the remoteness of it, it could be a real benefit, but it could also be very challenging then to identify, what you would think is identifying is issues, going out there and trying to, track down all of the issues that the technology has provided you knowledge of.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not quite there to be fully trusted without field verification, right? And a thorough field verification. But then again, that's my personal opinion. There might be other folks around here who might disagree with me. Maybe that's too why I might favor a little LiDAR instead of satellite imagery, or a combination of both, right? So, but I'm still, the jury's still out for me. Yeah.
Well, I think it is for a lot of utilities, especially on the, it's been well established on the transmission side, but on the distribution side, it is very much in its, I think, infancy still. There's a lot of learning to do to understand how it can effectively, help you manage your program.
Exactly. But, I want it to do everything. So I want it to take pictures and grow the trees and tell me where the best place to go. And I want it to optimize our mobilization,
Yeah.
right? Tell us, it's no different than FedEx determining
Right.
what's their best route, right? We should use the same technology. So working on it.
I'll definitely say this. I mean, I don't even think we've scratched the surface of the million things that we would love to talk to you about, just in terms of insurance and wildfire risk mitigation. And you obviously live and exist in a very relevant footprint to every conversation that's happening across the space. So we definitely are going to try to pin you down for maybe an extended episode where the four of us can kind of dig a little deeper and talk. But I really appreciate, Jeff, your time today, and this was fascinating, and getting to know you and hearing a little bit about what you guys are up to. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate
absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
That's it for this episode of Trees and Lines, brought to you by Iapetus Holdings. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. If you have any questions or comments on any of our episodes or ideas for topics or guests, we'd love to hear from you. Please contact us at treesandlines@iapetusllc.com. We'll chat with you soon.